Hello, and thank you for joining us for a special streaming portion of the Climate Underground, a gathering on regenerative agriculture where farmers, scientists, chefs, activists, and policymakers and other experts are all able to share their work and thinking about addressing the challenges we're facing with our food system and its connection to the climate crisis. It's my great pleasure to introduce Chef Carla Hall. Chef Carla thinks and talks about food as a way of connecting people, and she has spread that passion in so many ways, from hosting the Emmy Award-winning series The Chew to writing numerous cookbooks. Born in Tennessee, Carla has a special place in her heart for soul food and comfort food. So it's fitting that one of the recipes she's going to be sharing with us today is the one for her world-famous biscuits. Chef Carla, thank you so much for joining us. I hear you have an extraordinary young woman along with you, Janiyah Green.
Al, thank you so much. I am so excited to be here, and I feel like I'm in the presence of greatness with Janiyah. She's this year's National 4-H Youth in Action winner for agriculture for all that she does and all of the great work that she's doing in her community. Janiyah, hi!
Hi, Chef Carla.
It is so great to see you. You are looking so fabulous in that 4-H green.
Why, thank you.
And you made that apron?
Yes, I did. I made this morning, as a matter of fact.
You made that apron this morning?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
I told you all, we are in the presence of greatness. Come on. So do not be surprised from this point forward of all of the things that Janiyah can do. So Janiyah, today we'll be talking about food equity. We'll be talking about agriculture and so much more. And while we chat, we'll also be making corn biscuits with a chicken pot pie filling because that's just how we roll. Let's jump into making these corn biscuits, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Let's do it.
All right, so we're going to get all of our dry ingredients together. In this bowl, I have all-purpose flour, I've got cornmeal, and I've got baking powder, salt, baking soda, and a little bit of sugar because everybody likes sweet corn. So you've got all that?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to mix it up, Janiyah. You can just take your spoon. I have a whisk. You don't have to have a whisk. And the way to tell when this is all mixed up is that you shouldn't have any pops of yellow because the cornmeal is yellow. So if you mix it all up, everything should look homogenized. It should just look like a light yellow mixture. Okay, that way you'll know everything is mixed up. Does that look good? All right. Okay, now we're going to take a tablespoon of shortening, and then we're going to drop it in here. And then with our hands, with our fingers, we're just going to keep pinching the shortening and make sure that we get all of those lumps out. And the way that I do it, I pick up some flour and just drop. I pick up and drop. And so I make sure that all of the dry ingredients get a little bit of that shortening love. You know, the reason that I use the shortening is because it makes the outside of the biscuits nice and crisp.
Really?
Yeah, and then the insides are nice and soft. So how's that looking for you?
Looking great. Looking good. Looking good. Have that nice yellow tint here, and I also have the crisp color and all my dry ingredients.
No, it looks good from here.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
What does food equity mean to you, and when did it become an important mission for you?
Well, you know, as a chef, it is my job to feed people. And what I realized early on is this is how I nurture people. I nurture people with food. So when I think about food equity or the lack thereof and people not getting food. Oh, by the way, I'm grating my butter into my dry mixture, okay? So I feel that everybody has the right to good food and that it shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a right. And so the first time that I started really working with shelters and actually going out and feeding people was when I was in culinary school, because that's also how chefs give back. I mean, we cook for people, so for us, it makes no sense that people could not have food. And so I started going to DC Central Kitchen. And then I realized that when I was a young kid, I didn't realize that there was any food inequity in the United States. My perception of hunger was actually through UNICEF and and getting money for my school with UNICEF, and that it was in another country. So that I was you were so far ahead of me with the game, you know?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your understanding of food equity?
Well, in my opinion, I think that everyone should have access to fresh fruits and vegetables to be able to live a healthier lifestyle. Um, a lot of people in our country have a hard time accessing these things because, or they have to drive over maybe 30 minutes to an hour to access them, and it can make it really challenging for them to eat healthy on a regular basis. Now, when I started learning about food equity, I was 11 years old. I automatically started to realize how important it was for people to have nutritious foods and how important it was to live a healthy lifestyle. Also, through 4-H, I launched a community garden that people could come to get fresh fruits and vegetables and learn more about nutrition and what foods that they should eat. And
Yes.
this garden, I mean, you can come get food. You know, the vegetables in the garden is free to the community. You know, and it's no money involved. Everything is called the Village Community Garden, 4-H Village Community Garden. And this garden is very powerful because it helps to eliminate the food insecurity in my community.
And not only that, I mean, when you think about food equity, but also the health of people in every community, right? Because food
Yes,
is
ma'am.
medicine. And I think so
Yes, ma'am, it
often we
is.
think about, we separate the two. So when you talk about the inequities of food, you're also talking about the inequities of medicine and health and how it makes a huge difference. Oh, I kept going, by the way. I put in the corn after you got the butter in there. I put in the corn and I tossed all that around. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead and put in the corn. And then you just spoon that until it's all together. And then I put in my buttermilk and I was just making these hash marks. So you don't over mix it because that makes a tough biscuit. And so you just mix it enough until everything is sort of homogenized. And it's okay if you have some dry bits, that's okay too. But I think it's a point that you make with your garden, which I love. You know, there is, and then you have farmers in your family, don't you?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
So you know what it's like to grow your own food
Yes, most importantly, yes.
and to be empowered by that. Think about how if we could get everybody together and you talk about that community garden, but think about if there was like this big garden where everybody can go, but that garden regenerates the soil. And we're
That
looking
would
into
be
the future and
amazing.
we're supporting each other and all of that. That would be amazing.
Yes, it would. That would help so many people. You know, when you think about it, it's like the many people, like you mentioned earlier, you didn't know people were hungry in other countries, in our own country, you know. And so you have to realize that there are some people who can't afford a healthy meal, you know. Some people that can't
Yeah.
afford to go get the fresh fruits and vegetables, and you know what are they to do? You know what do they do in that case? You know, right now it's more important for the younger generation to get involved in farming because we have to teach them that it's good to be self-sufficient. So we have something here at the garden called aeroponic towers, and these towers merge technology and farming into one. And what really gets people when they hear aeroponics, they're like, what is that? But what really gets them is in 21 days, I can have fresh fruits and vegetables. With these towers, we're showing the community that it is possible. And these towers, they benefit a healthy lifestyle. And like I said, it's very important for everyone to have a healthy lifestyle.
The fact that you are excited about farming, does that, I mean, I feel like you are the new generation of farmers.
Yes. Yes.
So moving away from nutrition and thinking about all of the different cultures and the foods that they like to eat, as a young Black woman, what do you think the food is of your culture?
I think you have the power to make your own culture. Like, for example, I may want to eat a taco one day or eat something out of the ordinary, but the culture doesn't make me, I make the culture.
And I guess I think of food also as history. Like when you think about where certain ingredients came from, why certain cultures cooked the way that they did. I mean, Mexicans cooked a certain way, Italians cook a certain way and use certain ingredients, Africans use certain ingredients. And when the slaves came here, the enslaved, when they came here, they were used to certain ingredients like okra and black eyed peas and callaloo and sorghum and all of those ingredients. So as we sort of started integrating those ingredients into the American culture, then it kind of became soul food, which is the food that I feel is of my culture. It doesn't mean, though, for me, that I don't like to have a taco every now and then. However, it took me about probably 40 years to really get to loving my culture through food. It took me that long.
What are your experiences with food culture?
I went to a French culinary school. And by the way, I just want to show you this. So I have all of my biscuits on the sheet pan, and we buttered the sheet pan. I'm going to put these in the 425-degree oven for about 12 to 13 minutes until they get nice and brown. And I'm going to show you some finished ones, okay? And I'm going to answer your question. And if you have some finished ones, I want to see them. These are mine.
I do have
Let me see them. They look
I was
amazing.
experimenting, and I came up with these.
See, they look really good. They look real. These are mine. Can you see mine?
Oh, those are beautiful. Yes, those are beautiful.
So let's have one. Let's have a little bite together. I just want to see
Okay.
if you make a face or not.
Okay.
How did you do?
That's amazing.
Okay.
That is amazing.
I'm going to keep these here. And while I answer your next question, I want to start on the chicken pot pie. Okay. I have not forgotten about your question. All right, Janaya, you just pull up a chair and get comfortable, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And you can have a little snack while I'm making the chicken pot pie filling. All right, so I have carrots. I've got those in here. I've got celery. I've got some onions and I even use the celery leaves because I think they give so much flavor in both cooked and uncooked. And then I use a lot of herbs in my dishes because I think that it punches up the flavor. So here I'm going to use rosemary, sage, and thyme. And have you ever seen your grandmom or your mom use poultry seasoning?
Yes, ma'am.
This is what poultry seasoning is. So all these herbs, which I cut up, and I'm going to add some black pepper, some freshly ground black pepper. So all of that gets cooked up, all those herbs. Right now I'm smelling all of this deliciousness. And then I'm going to pour in some stock, some chicken stock actually. I'm going to pour that in here, and then I'm going to put the chicken in to poach. Now, back to your question. I went to a French cooking school. I was all about, French cooking because that was the epitome of, or the pinnacle of cooking when I went to culinary school, and I didn't want to do anything about with my culture. I knew my culture. I was having Sunday suppers at my grandmother's house every week after church. So I didn't want to do uh, pork chops or fried chicken or anything like that. I was more interested in bouillabaisse, in beef bourguignon, and you know what I mean? So I had turned away from my culture, and it wasn't until I had been approached about being a culinary ambassador to the African American Museum. And I went to the museum and I saw how much of our culture was in food. And I didn't know. I absolutely didn't know about my culture. So I had learned, and we're gonna simmer this. The chicken's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be delicious. So I didn't know, and I was like, if I don't know, that means so many people don't know about our culture. And when you know, information is power. And when you know more about your culture, there's more pride in your culture and more that you want to actually absorb your culture and live your culture and share your culture with somebody else. So it really, and then I started writing my cookbook, and I went through the South. I was in Mississippi. I was in Jackson, Mississippi. I was in Alabama. I was in Tennessee. I was in South Carolina, and just going through, I was talking to farmers, I was talking to cooks, I was going to churches, and really talking to them about the kinds of things that they ate when they were younger, because I used the idea, if my great, 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 great grandmother came over today, what would she be eating? And that was sort of like the journey that I went on, and I'm still on that journey. All of this cooks down. And then what happens is I have my chicken, which is nicely cooked. Here's my chicken that's cooked. And then I let it cool and I pulled it. And then I strained out all of those beautiful vegetables that you talked about. So this is the vegetables cooked. And here is this really flavorful stock, okay? So now, and you can even do this with a rotisserie chicken. You don't have to cook your chicken yourself, but just use those bones. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a quick roux. I'm going to put it in, I'm going to melt the butter, put the flour in here, and then I'm going to slowly add the chicken stock. And then now you can ask me whatever you want to ask me.
Why do you think it's important for people to learn where their food comes from?
Well, I think it's a sense of being. I think that the same way that if you were adopted and you want to understand where your parents are from, because there is some innate part of you that feels some connection, but you're not sure what. When I had my DNA done and I found out that my ancestors were from Nigeria, the Yoruba people from Nigeria, and the Bubi people from Bioko Island, I was so surprised how emotional that was, because I didn't know. I just thought my people were from somewhere in Africa. But to know what tribe, what country they were from, it was such a powerful piece of information. And with that comes that food history that we're talking about. So that food culture that I didn't know anything about. And now that opened up all of these different, this world to me. And when I look at that food and I can see how that food plays out here in the States, do you know hot water cornbread, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, hot water cornbread. The first thing that I realized when I learned about my culture from the Yoruba people in Nigeria, and they have cassava or fufu, right? And they have this cassava beet, and then they had it into this mush that they use that to eat, that they will eat a stew. That cassava or that fufu is like our hot water cornbread, except we had corn, and so they will then fry the hot water cornbread, but it connects back to Nigeria. It didn't just pop up. There's a connection to the people, and so that to me is powerful. And so I've been going back and forth, like sorghum and black-eyed peas. So when you talk about farming, you talk about, if people knew their history and they could connect back to those ingredients that are naturally healthy, right? That is powerful.
A lot of kids come to our community garden, and when I showed them our vegetables and how to grow them, they're like, huh, that's not where my food comes from. And once we had a group come, when one of the second years we were out here at the garden, we started having groups come in, and I was going through the whole tour about, it was during the fall time. We had greens there. So once one of the group, the kids, they're like, I was telling them, this is how you grow your collards or your broccoli. And they were like, that's not where my green comes from. I was like, so where does it come from? And he's like, the supermarket. I'm like, okay, so where do you think the supermarket gets their vegetables from? And you know what he told me? The bigger supermarket. The bigger supermarket.
See?
And I'm like, at that moment, I was like, wow. Some people just don't know. And that makes it even more important, especially for the younger generation, to understand how important it is to know where their food comes from, which is why I love to push being self-sustainable, because you growing your own food, you know exactly where it comes from. There's no chemicals, nothing being processed. You know what you're putting into your body. And it's like that connection to the agriculture, you begin to get an appreciation for not only the food, but the land, the nature, and the environment around you that you didn't even know about.
Yes.
We need the young generation, especially now, to understand and realize, to come to the realization of saying, hey, I grew this, I know what it takes to grow this, and I know how important it is to know where my food comes from.
Is that one of the things that you're really passionate about as a young person, to help other young people understand like where their food came from?
Yes, ma'am. It's so important, because without that, it's like you're walking around every day. It's like, I'm just eating food. You don't realize what you're eating or appreciate what you're eating. And then once the kids realize what they're growing, there's so much room for innovation and creativity. And it's like, oh, let's see, can I put this together? Can I put cilantro with thyme to see what that does? Or can I make a soup with this? Can I add this? Can I add a drop of rosemary into this to see what it would do? And it leaves their minds, it's like their minds are just generating. And it's like they give us so many ideas, and then they're cooking this for their families or this for that family. And in the Village Community Garden, we're also teaching the youth how to cook different meals. What herbs do you use? What herbs make a good dish? Different things of that nature. And like I can't stress enough how important it is that not even the younger generation, but people in general, how important it is for them to know where their food comes from and how to be self-sustainable.
See, I told you all, I just want to say right now, I feel like I'm in the presence of greatness when you speak, Janiyah, and you're so passionate. And it's all of these things that I think back in the day, we sort of forgot, not that we forgot about, but we started taking them for granted. And just hearing you talk so passionately about this, which is why regenerative farming is so important, because we actually need people, but we also need them to stuff that we need farming that is sustainable, right? So let me catch you up on what I've done with my pot pie. So I did the roux. I thickened up the broth because I did the butter and the flour. And then I put in those vegetables. I put the vegetables back in. I put the chicken that I pulled back in. I'm going to add some peas. I love frozen peas, by the way. Love, love, love. And
that's very delicious, and they're nutrition packed as well.
They're so delicious, and they're naturally sweet.
Very delicious.
I'm gonna add just a splash of heavy cream, just a little bit. And look, this is our pot pie. Oh, it looks so good. Oh my gosh, it smells so good.
Oh my goodness, that looks amazing.
So this is how I'm going to put everything together, okay? I want you to see this.
Okay.
And you know what? You know the thing that I love about this? You don't have to just use carrots and celery and onions. You can use whatever bounty is in your garden. If you want to throw some of those
Wow.
collards in here, you can do that. You can use anything. You can use parsnips. You can use butternut squash. You can make it vegetarian. It's only limited to your imagination.
Right, and now, like, with everything going on, we've been doing virtual classes teaching the community how to use different things like hibiscus, like how you make a hibiscus tea or
Yes.
different things. And teaching these everyone is not only teaching self-sustainability, but it's teaching them only we can save us. Be self-sustainable and grow your own foods, Especially now with COVID going on, it's even more important now.
No, 100%. You speak the truth. I'm just cooking the truth. So this is the final product. I opened up the biscuits. I spooned over the pot pie filling, and I put the tops back on. And now at the bottom, all of those crunchy bits of the bottoms of the biscuits, they got nice and toasty because we had the spray or the butter on the pan. That's going to soak up the juice. Is going to taste kind of like a dumpling. And then we have the biscuits on top. If you want to add just a little more black pepper, you can. But I think that we have something here, Janaya. I think that
That looks
with
very
you
delicious.
and me working for you, as you tell me what to cook from the farmers that you know, it's going to be incredible.
Yes, ma'am. That looks very delicious, might I add.
I'm going to have to get a big spoon. Let me tell you how it tastes. I'm just going to get this big old spoon. Okay, let me tell you how it tastes. I got to tell you, toot toot, honk honk, ooga. This is me tooting my own horn, girl.
It looks very delicious. It really does.
Janaya, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Al, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for having us, Janaya, at the Climate Underground. There's so much to learn. Wow, this was exciting.